Ordinance 1355, amending Ordinance 1331, approving the City of DeKalb, Illinois FY14 budget and ordinance, and 1332, approving the City of DeKalb, Illinois FY14 through FY18 staffing plan for part-time property inspectors. We have one individual, William Heinisch, wishes to speak. William?
Good evening, Council. Thank you. Again, my name is Will Heinisch. I'm president of the DeKalb Area Rental Association. I have really just two topics to briefly touch on tonight with you. The first is the placement of the part-time inspectors. The second issue I want to speak on is a code watch idea that was originally floated out in a number of task force meetings that's kind of been dropped or lost a little bit. But interesting enough, with the Corn Fest and me down at the fair for the past 5 days, a number of community members, for some reason, read the Chronicle, listened to the radio station, said they heard me on the radio, and read what was posted in the paper, and thanked me for bringing the issues forward. And a lot of people said, "You don't know me. I'm not a renter. I'm just a homeowner, and your feelings are the same as mine." So it kind of made me feel good, and I've heard that from multiple people. The community believes, in general, that the number one priority of the police department should be focused on crime. The police chief has done an excellent job, and I thank Chief Lowry for the focus that he's put on reducing crime. And I think we've seen that in our community, and it's due to his officers as well. So thanks, Chief. And I'm sure, though, because of his dedication and commitment, he will always do whatever he's asked to do. So I don't think you'll ever see him say, "No, I can't do this." So he's always going to ask what he's wanted to do. But, you know, in reading some of the blogs in the Chronicle and stuff, I think Herb Rubin has the best summary. He was on the task force, and I would say this is the sentiment of most of the task force members, that Herb Rubin posted in the paper in summary here that code inspection should be a criminal or a civil function. Code inspection should be a civil function, not a criminal function. So it's important to keep those items and those functions separated, that code inspectors should be in the code department and crime-free housing should be in the police department. The second topic I want to talk to you a little bit about is the code watch idea. I want to reference a little history about task force and the code watch. And I gave to the city clerk, I think she passed out to everybody a 3-page paper. If you go to the third page, under inspections, this was passed November 26th of 2012. But under item C, inspection protocol that the city council passed, it shall be the policy of the city to conduct sidewalk inspections or inspections of exterior and visible exterior common areas of all residential property within the city, including rental and owner-occupied. So all of the city. And that's what the task force wanted, all property. Even the NIU governmental study shows that the highest exterior property maintenance issues are in the oldest part of the town, and it doesn't matter if it's rental or owner-occupied. But it does go on to say that such inspections should be conducted on a regular basis so that properties are inspected on a 3-year cycle based upon available city staffing. Now that part of it was never agreed or brought up by the task force. That was something the past city manager put in and tried to implement as part of this big program. An idea that the task force had was the code watch idea. In the first 2 pages of the code watch plan that I've given you as a summary of that, and that's a summary of talking to various people in the city, staff, council members, police, etc. The idea of code watch is supposed to be modeled after iWatch. which is very successful. iWatch, if you're familiar with it, the police chief has done a great job. They've got online where any person, if you see a crime, you take a picture of it, it immediately goes in and logged. And I asked the chief several months ago, he followed up. He said he talked to the programmers of the iWatch program, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said it could be easily modified or added at minimal expense to add a code watch, so that similarly, if a citizen is going through an area, sees a code watch, junk cars, high grass, whatever, they could snap a picture, fill out the information, it would go to the city. So that's Code Watch. And basically, it would be a simple, easy line system of identifying and reporting code violations as discussed and supported in task force meetings. It can be used by citizens, aldermen, police, fire, public works to maximize effectiveness and efficiency at minimum cost. It will improve property maintenance and reduce overall code violations. So instead of systematically inspecting the whole city, house by house by house, we're empowering the people. And this program could be used then by all departments as a central program for helping improve maintenance. Ron Naylor, numerous times, and all aldermen see it in their neighborhoods, the deterioration and lack of code maintenance. I want to give the citizens an opportunity, whether they're renters, owners, or whoever, to communicate with the city their needs and where they're seeing the code maintenance violations are. I think an increased focus and compliance will be on abandoned and foreclosed properties. I think code watch and inspectors can focus on code issues, and it should be located in the code department where their expertise is. Crime-Free Housing Bureau should focus on crime, be located in the police department where their expertise is. Inspection should be dropped from the crime-free housing title. Let me repeat that. Inspection part should be dropped from the crime-free housing title. However, both departments need to work together as they have currently been doing. A couple things in conclusion. The program should be promoted as an officer-friendly approach, much like the Neighborhood Watch program in the police department, but in code, for compliance rather than the heavy-handed approach. However, there will be cases where compliance will only be achieved through stronger and enforcement methods. I believe the program can be used as a relationship-building tool between the community, the city, and recommended as in the EPI report. This could be a powerful tool in gaining trust and cooperation between newly elected city council, staff, citizens, landlords, renters, and the whole community. So my challenge to you is let's get started today. Let's follow up with Code Watch, get that implemented, and I think we all agree that code violations are a problem in the city. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Will.
Mayor,
Yes. Rudy?
I'd like to thank Mr. Heinisch for his comments. Before I address some of those, I thought it would be a good opportunity, since we're going to be discussing the crime-free and housing inspection program, to maybe just give you a quick update in regards to the program of where we are. So I asked for some information from Carl Leone. So,
Rudy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could we initially review the four components of the crime-free or safe quality crime-free ordinance? And my understanding is that those cover disorderly house, crime-free lease addendum, registration of landlords, and the sidewalk inspections.
right,
Correct?
right.
So four components.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's a good point, Mayor. Thank you. So just a quick update in regards to where we are in the program. So to date, the Crime-Free Housing Bureau has opened 210 cases covering 235 charges, which has resulted in 35 evictions initiated and 16 voluntary move-outs. Domestic battery and disorderly house are the main violations through the criminal charges. Registrations continue to come in. We're unsure exactly how many rentals we do have, but we're assuming there's about 9,000 units, excuse me. So with that, we have about 87% compliance in regards to the actual registration. We're looking at online rental sites for homes that are also now being rented. And we have sent out letters to those residents once we find that they're not compliant. The workbook for the landlord training has been completed. The book has been certified with the crime-free logo, and Mr. Leone is working on the PowerPoint for the class, about 80% completed. So the classes will need to be scheduled at a minimum of one per month until we get through all the landlords. So just a quick update as to where we are in regards to that. In addressing some of the issues that Mr. Heinisch brought up, I do first want to say that we've met with Dara and specifically Mr. Heinisch twice now. They've been good discussions. I think there is definitely the need and desire on all fronts, City Council, Dara, City staff, to make sure this program works. I think that's a fact. Obviously, the supervision of these inspectors seem to be the major issue. We specifically did not hire these inspectors until after the budget was adopted by the City Council, because we wanted to see if the City Council was willing to proceed with that. So we held off on that. We did advertise and post for those jobs. So with that, in regards to Code Watch, just like Mr. Heinisch said, he's met with Chief Lowry. Chief Lowry can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something that we definitely want to do as part of that iWatch, create a Code Watch. I think Mr. Heinisch right, that's going to be beneficial to all of us. Some things that we've been working on, at least on staff, is, initially part of the program was we, inspect every single property within 3 years. Well, given that we only have 3 part-time inspectors, I think that's going to be rather difficult to do. So I think our focus initially is probably going to be some of the problem properties that we see that, you can drive by and see them right away. So that's something we as staff are recommending that we focus more on that. We'll probably get more bang for our buck doing it that way. Something that was discussed as well, it was actually part of the hotel inspection program, is using the off-duty firefighters as an option. In this case, you can use these guys since they know the towns relatively well as an option instead of hiring part-time personnel. That way, when there's busy times, especially during the summer, you can actually, ramp that program up. During the winter, you can actually ramp it down when you can't see as much from the sidewalk inspection. So it gives us a nice option in regards to how to manage the program. Again, this is something that the staff was considering. Just to comment in regards to where they are supervised, when we've talked to Dara, we as staff, we're not necessarily in disagreement of what they're suggesting. What I would recommend, and I've said this to them, I'm going to say it to the City Council, is I would recommend we move forward with the way the program was established by the City Council, because we continue to delay and delay and delay move forward with the program because of these kind of issues. What I'd like to do is, after the city manager is hired, probably after a year if we can get the program going, is come back to the City Council, give a full report, just like you're recommending with the hotel inspection program, and see where we're at with that. I mean, this is cost, the things we're finding, as well as if there's a better way to handle it. The truth is, when we discuss this with a number of municipalities around the state, they do it a bunch of different ways. Some people have it in code, an inspector. Some people have it actually in the fire department. Some people do have it in police. So there's no true model of the way to do it. It's dependent on the community that you're in. Okay? So that's why, in this sense, we're suggesting we move forward with at least the program it is now. We'll commit to coming to the City Council a year after it's been in process, and then we'll discuss if there is a better way to do that. It may very well be it's best under code. That may be the best case scenario. The truth is we won't know that until we actually can move forward with the program. So it makes it difficult to say this is the best way to do it until we actually get moving on it. So I think that's the staff recommendation, and we'd love to hear your comments and suggestions.
And at this point, Rudy, it's my understanding that Mr. Leone has begun anticipating those code inspectors within the Bureau.
That's right.
As it's structured now.
That's correct. I mean, again, it was put under the Bureau. The inspectors were put under the Bureau, so he was proceeding as if to hire those inspectors. So yes, that's already in process, but we are waiting for council direction on this.
Okay. Alderman Lash.
Thank you. I definitely do see both sides of this argument. I can see where it would work under either one. I do tend to lean towards keeping it as it is now for a few reasons, and the biggest is to just give the program a chance to work as it is. Rudy's absolutely right. We've been delaying, and we want to wait for the budget, and then we want to wait for the city manager, and we need to give this program some time to work. As far as other arguments, just for the structure of the program, I don't think that keeping it under the police department takes any focus away from law enforcement. I think Chief Lowry's been doing an amazing job as far as that's concerned, and he is not in direct supervision over those code enforcement officers. That would be Mr. Leone. As far as, I think keeping it in one area, all four of those aspects that the mayor mentioned of the program, keeping it all under one department, allows all of those functions to happen in one place. I think it makes it easier to track problems and see them through. I think it makes it easier to recognize and deal with repeat offenders and stay on top of them. And I also think it makes it easier for everybody involved in this program to create and maintain relationships with the landlords and with the tenants. So I do think there are some, I see both sides. I don't really feel real strongly one way or another, but I do think there are some very compelling arguments for keeping it the way it is, and come back to us in a year, and if it's not working out, then we can change it. But I also do think that the time to change this would be budget time, because moving them will put them under a different budget line.
Thank you. Alderman Dana.
Yes, again, I guess I expressed my frustration in the implementation of this program. I generally concur with the city manager's recommendation, as I've stated previously, to go forth with the way that it's currently set up. Whether it's in the police department, the fire department, the code enforcement department, public works, city manager's office, hopefully it would function under any of those. But if you recall back when this was discussed back in October, I believe it was, of last year, all of this was discussed and debated at that time, and bottom line is to keep it centralized under one department, so that you have like one boss and you have one direction to go, and that code inspectors don't get, or the sidewalk inspectors don't get lost doing many other things other than focusing on this initiative, at least initially here. I respect all the input from everybody out there, Dara, Mr. Heinisch. The Code Watch is a great idea. I would support that as a supplement to go along with the iWatch. There's lots of software out there by various vendors. If not, iWatch can't do it to bring that information in. But I think the people out there that has eyes and ears currently are reporting from time to time. I can see where this might enhance that, but I don't think this is going to be the salvation for the correction of our problem that's out there and getting the information to the city of these various initiatives or what do you want to say, properties that need maintenance out there. I think it's be a great supplement. But we have debated this on various occasions, and going back over the various meetings from October and November of last year, and the then mayor at that time, Chris, had called forth one by one all the various items. They were concurred in, they were approved. It was in the police department, not in the code division. These code inspectors, sidewalk people, are going to be visually observing property maintenance. They're not going to be pursuing criminal activities. And if they do, then the changes would need to be made. But I think that would be determined after we have the program up and running, and you have 6 months, a year's of time under your belt, so you can go back and evaluate, similar to so many other things that we do here, that you reevaluate, particularly those are done prior to budget time, so they can be incorporated or changes made at budget time. I would just like to see this program going. I would like to have seen those inspectors, sidewalk inspectors out on the streets last spring, 6 months ago on it, and here we are again, another month or so of delay of getting this off and running. So to me, let's get on with it. Let's accept the program as it is. Let's give it a chance. Let's get it going on it. Thanks.
Alderman Baker.
Kristen, I agree that the budget time is the time to talk and tweak, not a year or year and a half from now. Ron, I agree with you. We could start tomorrow. But, in fact, I hope that after tonight's meeting that we do start tomorrow. But what everybody needs to be reminded that this is Mark Bernanke's plan. Mark isn't here anymore.
It's the city council's plan,
Ron,
David. It's not Mark.
Point of order, I'm not
Bernanke's
going to
plan.
give up my time.
We approved it.
Ron, I'm speaking, okay?
Thank you. Yes.
We can debate all you want after the meeting, but, you know, right now I want to continue. I didn't interrupt you. This was Mark Bernanke's plan. I do not want to saddle this council, which has 3 new members, with Mark Bernanke's plan. They were not privy to the 7 years of arguing that got us to this point. They have to be understanding that the task force has been somewhat ignored in their recommendations. 18 months of work went into this. We're down to just a couple of fundamentals. We want to see this succeed. First of all, this new idea of the part-time fireman, of firemen off duty at the already prearranged G7 rate is an excellent idea. They're going to be doing this work as needed. If there's no work that day, they're not on the payroll, they're not sent out to go try to find something to do with that time. If they show up and there's work, and that work has to do with the Crime-Free Housing Bureau, and Carl has sent an email to TJ and carbon copied over to Lou, if it's in code, in the code department, they will figure out what they need, if needed, as far as people for that day. We're going to have people with badges, uniforms, vehicles that are most importantly GPSed, so that if there's any accusations of wrongdoing, they can be tracked and figured out immediately. I was in favor of the $15 an hour employees until recently. I'm absolutely opposed to that right now. We could start tomorrow with already trained people and get this program going. I do not think that the way to start this is a way that we're uncomfortable with and the community is uncomfortable with, and that is to have it totally in the police department. I do think that we all worked together and fought hard to move Carl from the code building along into the new police station. That's where he will be the most efficient with his assistant. But as far as, and Carl is trained on code right now, he can go out and see for himself when there's a follow-up on a crime report as to what type of action, maybe in the neighborhood or that particular building, he can call for inspections or extra people to help him out. But I think it's up to code to have one more check and balance and 2 more people involved. We have the police chief, we have Carl, and then over in code we have TJ and we have Lou. I think that is what the community would accept. Let's start it out as a crime-free housing bureau. Let's get started tomorrow with the off-duty firemen as inspectors who already do rooming house inspections. I would presume that we have everybody already on the staff. We can get going tomorrow. That's what I'm asking for. And the idea of overlapping this not past budget time, or excuse me, past budget time, gets us into the same situation we're at tonight. 5 people should be a simple majority to decide this. But because it got passed at the last budget, When Mark Bernanke was still here, we're stuck with needing 6 votes tonight to change that. If we come up next spring and 5 people want to change it, it can be changed with a simple majority, not with the 6. And that's the problem. If there's 5 people tonight that want to change it, why would you want to fight that? We're just going to change it again in May. Why don't we just do it now and give it its best chance?
Okay.
And that's the amendment proposal that I'm working on here.
Okay. Alderman Jacobson?
I think Ron hit the nail on the head. These are people out enforcing city code. They're not enforcing criminal allegations. You're absolutely right. There's a department for that, code enforcement. I wouldn't want someone from the water department in here acting as our attorney. I wouldn't want someone from engineering out fighting my fire if my house was on fire. We have a department for this that's set up to handle these things and is tasked with doing those things. I wouldn't want any other department handling other departments' issues for a reason. Because they're not, that's not what they're set up for. That's not what the train and thought is. That's not what should be out there happening on our streets. We should have the departments that we task to deal with those issues. Enforcing the city code is code enforcement's responsibility. So, I mean, it only makes sense to have them out there doing the job, and I've said that since day one. It doesn't make sense that it falls in the police department. If there's a management issue in the code enforcement department, if there's a staffing issue that we don't have the staff in code enforcement to do it, if those are things we should be talking about. If not, this is a code, these people are set up to enforce city code. That's code enforcement's job. I don't understand why we'd give it a chance to see if it worked anywhere else. Just the same as, again, I wouldn't want to give it a chance to see if Joel would go fight my fire in my house. That would be silly. Why give it a chance when we have a department that's already there for that purpose?
Okay. Alderman Naylor?
Well, basically, those people would be pursuant to their job description, and I'm certain their job description would probably be no different than an inspector in the code enforcement office and not the job description as a police officer, other than being administered by the crime-free housing director. There would be basically no difference in what their functions and duties are out there. Relative to Mr. Baker's comment regarding the approval of the ordinance and Mr. Bernanke's plan, you need to remember that that was approved by the city council, and all the directions was given by the city council, and staff, whether it was Mr. Bernanke or someone else, was taking all of the information that was gathered over the past couple of years from the task force, simulating it, putting it all together, coming forth with the various elements of it, of which was approved, if I recall, basically piece by piece by piece over a long period of time, and it was not something that Mr. Bernanke formulated and all of a sudden brought to us. Further, Mr. Baker, in the approval of that ordinance back in November, I give you November 26th, I realize you did not have an opportunity to vote on it because you were absent from that roll call. Had you been there at the time, you might have been able to express at that time your displeasure with the ordinance, but you have to remember that that motion by then the elected council passed on a 6-1-1 vote. So that was a 3/4 vote approval of that. There was one nay, and of course the one absent vote, which was you on that. I mean, I just look at it as a process to continue to tear apart, I guess, that 2 or 3 years worth of work of trying to address our property maintenance problems throughout the city. And again, I just reiterate, I'd like to see it get going and maintain it the way it is, maintain it the way that it's proposed to be done, as we approved it back in November, which is, what, 7-8 months or so ago. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman O'Leary?
Yes, I personally would like to see the code enforcement build up. One of the things I'm constantly seeing around the city of DeKalb is that there's property that's not been, property is gone to waste, and there's no one to enforce. And when I asked the question, I kept saying, why don't we enforce anything around here? And they said, there's no one in code. I'm like, okay. Why can't we put these 3 part-time people in code to do the enforcement that we need around town? Because we need some enforcement around here. And I understand what we need with the crime-free housing. I like the suggestion that Mr. Heinrich had here, but we need code enforcement, so why can't we just put them in code and have that done that way?
I think it should be understood that the 3 part-time inspectors we're discussing would be dedicated to housing inspection, sidewalk inspection of housing.
Again, primarily, that is the way the system is set up, yes.
Okay.
So then
Thank
we'll
you.
still, we still need people actually in code as well.
Well, and Alderman O'Leary, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is a bigger discussion,
Right.
even above this. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want property maintenance, I mean, just efficient enforcement of property maintenance, we're going to need a lot more than 3 part-time inspectors. And that's the truth. I mean, that's a much bigger discussion than just part of the rental inspection program.
Alderman Lash.
Thank you. This actually is starting to get to what I was going to comment on, which kind of piggybacks off of what Alderman Jacobson said. You know, he really brought up my biggest concern with moving them under code, which is our code enforcement department is already very understaffed, and if we put these 3 officers under the code enforcement, will that be their main job, is enforcing this particular ordinance, which is the intent of these 3 officers, or will they be used in other places, and then we see the enforcement of this particular ordinance go down? I would really be much more on the fence, not really leaning either way, if we had another 1 or 2 code enforcement officers where I felt comfortable that we had that coverage to supervise them under the code enforcement department. It's really, that gets to the heart of why I'm leaning towards keeping them where it is, because I really want to see this program succeed, and I don't think it's going to succeed without those dedicated people to see it through.
Alderman Naylor.
I'll pass it this time.
Okay. Alderman Jacobson.
Correct me if I'm wrong, their job description will be to enforce the city code on property maintenance, correct?
No.
That's what these 3 inspectors are going to be tasked to do. They're not out doing disorderly houses. They're not out doing crime issues. They are out enforcing the current law on the books of our city code, correct? And that's what code enforcement is also tasked to do. So by combining them in the same department, if they're working together toward abating the nuisances and the code issues, that's what the job we're trying to get done is. So I don't understand where there's a mission creep or where there's confusion or where, that's the job they're going out there to do. They just have a different supervisor.
Let me ask Rudy to address the job description.
And Alderman Jacobson is right. In a sense, we use the existing property maintenance part-time inspectors for the job description. And I can tell you the main reason we did that is because we're still creating the program. And we use an existing job description just so we can get people hired, knowing that, again, it's management supervision as to, or intent to say what they're going to be focused on specifically. Now, if we say you're going to be focused on primarily on the sidewalk inspections for this program, that's where it'll be allocated. And that was the thinking.
And what are they primarily tasked with doing right now?
We haven't hired them yet.
I'm saying our existing code enforcement people, what are they doing? Driving around from the streets and
Right.
finding violations.
Well, no, keep in mind, and we have three
Way
gentlemen
more than that.
in building. We have a building supervisor and 2 building inspector 2s, okay? Again, not property maintenance, but building. So their primary focus has always been new building, new construction. Okay, so when we do have that, and again, they've been busy with that, and then they're able to, I guess, use some of their time towards property maintenance. And it's reactionary. It's when we get a call, we go out. This is not anything proactive. So their primary focus, as part of their job description, at least for Lou Larson, Roger Vogt, Dave Reynolds, is buildings. So given that, yeah, that's why they're not focusing exclusively on property maintenance.
So then the issue is that they're understaffed with people to concentrate on property maintenance.
And yes,
And we have
I
the
don't think that's a
option tonight
surprise.
of staffing them with people to do property maintenance inspections. And we're debating this? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We have that option. We have that ability to fill in that department, to concentrate on that issue, and I don't understand why it's a debate, why it's an issue.
But to narrowly concentrate on that issue toward rental property.
So we
Yes,
task
that's the
them,
intent.
again, it's not supposed to be toward just rental property. It's supposed to be
Yeah,
toward all property.
In the ordinance, it's all
And that was the
residential.
discussion that Will had earlier, that it's not just rental property, it's
And-
rental family and single-family homes that are part of the law and part of what task force wanted us to go forward in doing. And I think it's very simple. You task them right at the beginning with, this is your job. The only issue we're having here is who is supervising them.
Okay.
I mean, that's really what this comes down to, is who is the supervisor?
That's right.
Is it going to be crime-free housing, which is a crime issue, or is it going to be code enforcement when this is a code enforcement issue?
Well, and I would characterize, Dave, that it is more than crime-free housing. It's safe quality and crime-free housing. And we tend to lose that safe quality component. And that may be part of the naming of the Bureau, but my view is that there were 4 charges to that Bureau, part of which were sidewalk inspections under one supervisor, Alderman Nader.
Right. Well, that's another, I was going to say, is I think we're sort of losing the understanding of what the whole program was and how it got to where it is that the sidewalk inspection part of it was to go out and identify all of the properties. And with 9,000 properties out there, you know, it was developed, indicated that possibly they could do 3,000 a year, and you got to keep in mind, these are part-time people, 20 hours a week, so you got 60 hours a week of potential people out there working from the sidewalk to identify these problems, and thence to assist the director in following up on these. Once you identify them, you just don't identify them. There's a lot of paperwork, notification, follow-up, and then working, I'm assuming, with the code enforcement people on the actual repairs. If there are repairs, there's going to be a lot of coordination with the existing 2, 3 code enforcement people that are there, above and beyond what their duties are currently. When you start bringing on possibly hundreds of potential issues out there, you know, you are going to totally snow the 2 or 3 people that we have there in follow-up and pursuing these corrections. But the initial thrust was, if I recall from back all those meetings, was we didn't really know what is out there, how much, how many, who, where, what. And that's what the sidewalk inspectors, in my understanding, are to be doing, is to identify these properties and then to assist. So, you know, and who they're administered by, it was decided to keep it all in one area, and that would be in the police department at this point in time.
Alderman Baker.
Well, I think we've got 3 issues, and maybe we should go through them one at a time. Mayor, Safe Quality and Crime-Free Housing Bureau. I like it. Let's get the word inspection out of there. That should be one of the votes right now. The other one is, and I'm not sure where we're going to land on this, which is why we need to make this a separate vote. I'm uncomfortable with 3 part-time, $15 an hour employees that we all have to worry about who's keeping track of them, what are they up to. We don't have to worry about that with firemen. Yes, it's going to be a little more expensive, but they're instantly trained. The whole community trusts the firemen. I'm never going to trust $15 an hour employees to be part of this process. I've lived in this town 35 years, and I'm not going to, at this moment, discuss all the problems that we had when we had what I considered out of control, lots of full-time people in the code enforcement. And there wasn't really, I think, a lot of checks and balances. I'm very comfortable with 3. I'm not willing to add more. I'm willing to add unlimited as needed off-duty firemen. That I'm very comfortable with. There's no legacy cost. We're in there. So I'd like to, let's get that question settled first. I'm looking for a second to that we don't hire the part-time, but we use that budget from now until next budget time to, as needed, draw upon off-duty firemen. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second it.
I hear a second. Okay.
This motion is to, instead of part-time $15 an hour employees, we take that budget, wherever that budget ends up, that's going to be a different vote, and use towards that budget on an as-needed basis off-duty firemen at the G7 rate to do the inspections. And by the way, they wouldn't be limited to just the sidewalk. They'll do whatever needs to be done because they can, and they're already part of the city.
So it's a motion to amend the budget and staffing plan to reflect the use of firefighters at the 7G rate instead of part-time personnel for the...
Yes, and that's what I believe I asked for the second on. Is that clear enough? Is that what you
Is
meant?
that your second, Dave?
Correct.
Okay. Discussion, Alderman Naylor.
Well, this is sort of interesting, that's how we got to part-time. $15, $20, whatever they are, is because the other way was too expensive. Whether it was full-time or more professional people doing these inspections. I just don't understand which way we're going here. And then also the cost. Does that not impact the cost when you're going to pay? What's the rate for that Q7 rate for a fireman? $49 an hour, something like that? 39? $43 an hour? Let's see, that's only 3 to 4 times the amount of cost for these part-time inspections. And that was a big component, if I recall, of the overall total program of, what do we have budgeted, $150,000 this year to cover all of these on it? So what I mean, it's ridiculous.
Really?
And Mayor and Council, again, I'm the one that offered it, again, just, but I feel obligated to also let you know, just like we had in our earlier discussion in regards to the hotel program, that, just like Alderman Naylor was saying, there is additional cost because of that. Okay, it's a higher cost, hence why this is a budget amendment. Because you're looking at, and I worked with the chief on this, we budgeted for the part-time inspectors about $61,000, okay? If you look at doing the 7G rate with the number of inspectors at the same amount of hours, you're looking at double that cost. So again, in all transparency, you're looking at doubling the cost, and then therefore the general fund would have to eat that cost. So please be aware of that, hence why it is a budget amendment. Okay.
Alderman Baker.
For clarification, just so you can think about this, we've got 60,000. I'll bet you we don't use up that 60,000 even at the G7 rate. But bear in mind, Alderman Naylor is correct. We had 150,000 in the budget, general fund, for this program. In addition to that, we've already been told tonight that we've taken in an additional 159,000 in registration fees. That's $309,000 that I don't think we've spent. Even if we use that 60, we won't even spend the 150. We didn't pick up the extra car. I mean, help me out here. What am I missing? But it seems to be we've got lots of money here to play with, but yet we're only talking about that 60,000, and we don't have to use those people by your own admission when it's cold out. They might only work 2 hours every couple of weeks or every week. But when it's warm out and we've got the high grass and we've got the apparent problems, they can dive right in tomorrow.
Yep. I want to make clear, the 150,000 that was put in the budget, not this budget, but the last budget, okay, was to help create the program. That $150,000 was eliminated and moved into this crime-free housing and inspection program. Okay, so it's incorporated as part of the program, inclusive of Carl Leone, the administrative assistants, as well as the part-timers and everything else they need to help run this program. So I don't want the council to think that there's an extra 150,000. There is not. We budgeted 277,000 for this program specifically. Okay, so with that budget, again, if you want to consider the off-duty firefighters, personally, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but there is additional cost as part of that. And that's what the council needs to consider.
Alderman Lash.
Thank you. I have to say, Dave, I take a lot of offense to something you just said. You don't trust part-time $15 an hour employees of the city of DeKalb to handle this job. How many part-time employees do we have with the city right now who might have just heard that? How many $15 an hour employees of the city do we have right now taking care of just as important jobs in the city as that? We're sitting up here, and I think it was you and I one time that figured out that we are paid way less than $15 an hour for the work that we put in, and you're talking about we have a lot of money to play with. And then we wonder why people don't trust us up here.
We have an extra 159,000. And to answer that question, I don't think that any landlord out there would ever trust a part-time employee, which could turn over every month, every 2 months, to be the person that comes in and tells them what they have to or to do in order to be able to hold on to their property. Or, Kristen, if we have the firemen and they're going to be there year after year after year, they'll at least know who they talked to the last time and what was said when a new inspection comes along or a new problem comes up. Yes, I do think it's a problem, and I think that's what this is all about.
That was actually one of my arguments. Thank you for keeping it where it is now, because if they're all under one supervisor, it actually gives them a better chance to form those relationships. I'm still just absolutely flabbergasted that you could say you would not trust a City of DeKalb employee. With the screening we're going to put them through, with the hiring process that we have, with the number of part-time employees we already have with the city, with us sitting up here as part-time employees of the city, making way less than $15 for the number of hours we put in.
Do you know how many employees of the city have been terminated for conducting personal business on city time in the last 10 years? There are a lot of people in the audience that know. And maybe it was before you started, but people in the community brought forth video camera evidence of what can go on and what did go on, and people were terminated over it. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. I'd like to bring us back to the motion before us with a second, and help me with that motion, Diane.
Instead of motion to amend by Dave Baker, instead of hiring part-time $15 employees, take that budget money and use it towards off-duty firefighters as needed to do the inspection, seconded by Alderman Jacobson.
Okay. And I'll ask for a roll call.
Alderman Baker,
Yes.
O'Leary, no. Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
No.
Snow,
No.
Naylor,
No.
Ray,
No.
3 aye.
2.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 aye.
Okay. So motion defeated. Is there a motion to receive and file the the ordinance 1355 then? amending 1331 and 1332. This is moving it's a budget amendment, moving the dollars from the police department over to code. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
Could you explain, what are we doing now here on this one? Okay.
First reading, and this is to move it's a budget amendment to move the dollars from police department over to code for the part-time inspectors. And first reading, Dean, this requires a 2/3 vote?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion, Alderman Snow?
It's been a lot of good discussion tonight on this project, and I think, first of all, I don't know if it's really important right now what department the inspectors are located under. I do think that needs to be addressed over the 6-9 months. So whichever way we go, I think we need to revisit this down the road. But we need some experience behind us. I guess, in one sense, I'd prefer to wait a few months to see who gets hired and what the pros and cons of the different scenarios are. I'm not entirely opposed. I think eventually these people need to be under the code department. Still sort of undecided whether we should do that now or later, but I think that's the direction we need to go. Is just whether we do it now or 6-9 months from now.
Okay. I'd like to express my preference is to not make a structural change at this point, but complete the search for a new city manager, have that position filled, have an individual in that role that could then assess the effectiveness of the Housing Bureau and make structural recommendations if those are deemed appropriate at that time. Further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call then.
Alderman O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
No.
Lash,
No.
Snow,
No.
Naylor,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Ray,
No.
3-I.
Okay. So at this point, the motion is defeated,
Yes.
not receiving a 2/3 majority.
Right.
Okay. Are we,
Well,
what do we need?
On to the next
Is there,
item.
I guess clarification from the mayor.
yes.
Did you want to see this program start tomorrow, or did you want to wait till we have a new city manager in place? As
I
far
would
as the
see
60,000
starting the
budget being
program, Alderman Baker, under the proposed structure of part-time inspectors under the Housing Bureau Director
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Okay, I guess the only thing that, maybe we got to bring this back at next meeting, but I absolutely want to see whatever vehicle that these people are driving around in be GPSed, and there be some sort of an audit and keep track of them very closely.
Okay.
You don't trust them.
I don't even know who they are yet.
Yep.
No, we've had too many problems in the last 10 years, and we want to,
Reports.
Let's move on to council reports. The first item I wanted to raise, the Castle Challenge is scheduled to occur this Friday at Husky Stadium. I cannot attend that as representative of the city. I understand Alderman Fanouken will be attending. Are there other aldermen that will be attending that may choose to represent the city?
I'm going to attend, but Bill's more than welcome to
Okay.
represent the city.
Bill, I'd ask you to represent the city then at that event this week, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Just as an announcement, I'll be traveling this week to Moscow, Idaho. President Baker at the university is hosting a contingent at that Idaho NIU game. Around that event, we will be putting a tour of some of the community university projects that have occurred out in that community. The following week, Monday, Alderman Jacobson and I will be in Washington, D.C., attending various committee meetings that our lobbyist firm, M Capital, is scheduling for us before various legislative committees and legislators in Washington, D.C. Friday last week, President Baker convened a NIU Diversity Leadership Summit that I attended on behalf of the city. Help me with Brian Gregory,
Right.
city manager in Sycamore, attended on behalf of Mayor Mundy. Beyond the two city representatives, President Baker convened faculty, staff, and students from Northern to address the diversity issue. It was very constructive, and I think it's a precursor to the effort that President Baker sees applying to that diversity issue within the university community, but also bridging over into the larger DeKalb community